do you think that all of these issues have been the reason why, in the latest opinion poll, Keir Starmer's rating is now below that of Rishi Sunak? And let's not forget, Rishi Sunak is the man who led the Conservative Party to their biggest defeat in the party's history. How on earth is our Prime Minister now polling worse than that?
Well, I'll be more interested in the polls 3 months before an election than 3 months after them. We've been elected with a big majority. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got a big and difficult legacy from the Conservative Party to work through. And when we've done that, we get on with stabilising the economy, getting growth going, generating the wealth that we need for our public services, turning around the NHS and making sure that living standards rise all around the country. That's the agenda that I and my cabinet colleagues are working to every day. Yes, we've had a few difficult headlines,
Pat,
which you read out.
You used to work.
And, you know, I'm not saying I don't wish these stories had taken place, but we'll get through it, and we've got a big agenda for the future.
But you used to work for Tony Blair, who was known as the master of spin. Of course, there was only 1 point during his first term in office where he even dipped behind the Conservatives, and that was the fuel crisis. I mean, really, the first few months, even the third month, fourth month, the first year, the first 4 years that Tony Blair was in position, he never dipped below William Hague in terms of favourability. The party never fell behind the Conservatives apart from at one moment during a national crisis. I mean, there's no comparison. Clearly, there is something going very wrong with the operation of Number 10.
Well, it's interesting you raise the Tony Blair era, and you're right. I used to work for Prime Minister Blair, and as your viewers can probably tell, I've been around the block a little bit when it comes to politics. I think there's a bit of rose-tinted spectacles in looking at the past sometimes. I remember a lot of stories about divisions then. I remember a big story about a Bernie Ecclestone donation, you might remember, which felt like quite a crisis at the time. And the important thing is that we
felt like a crisis, but it didn't dip his poll numbers in the way that Keir Starmer's poll numbers have dipped. And perhaps, Pat, what I'm getting at here is that despite things being thrown at Tony Blair, his poll numbers didn't dip because he had a competent operation. He had strong spinners. He had, he had a smooth operation behind Number 10. Whether you agreed with him or not, people always knew he seemed competent. That seems very different now when you've got briefings between figures behind the scenes in Number 10. Sue Gray, the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, her salary was leaked by someone within Number 10. So now we know that she earns more than the Prime Minister. The story is less that the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff earns more than him. It's that someone else in that building leaked that to the media. You're fighting like rats in a sack.
Well, it's interesting you should praise the spinners of the past. As I say, I remember this well because I was there, and they were always being attacked at the time. The spin was too much. People didn't like spin. They didn't like having strong briefers. You appear to be calling for a return of the strong spinners. I don't want to blame any of the government's recent difficulties on staff. I don't think politicians should do that. I don't think it's fair. We'll work our way through these things. We've got a big agenda to work on. I outlined some of that to you a few minutes ago. We've got a big important budget coming up in a few weeks' time. We've got an investment conference coming up. We've got legislation on rights for renters, on transport, on GB energy, hereditary peers, a big legislative programme. That's what we're working on, and that's what we're going to get on with.